Hi everyone, this is Rick McDermott with Senior Solutions Group, and we are going to discuss the new drug called Leqembi. The FDA just recently approved it, actually just after the 4th of July, and Medicare has also followed suit. So those of you who have been following the news over the last couple of years, about 2+ years ago, another drug, Aduhelm, by the same makers of Biogen, which produced Aduhelm, the whole thing kind of fizzled out, and people's Medicare premiums went up about 15% in 2021, in part due to this drug, which was never fully covered by Medicare, even though the FDA approved it. Little background information: 3 FDA panel members resigned in protest as the clinical trials were sketchy at best, and how it got approved, who knows. But anyway, this drug shows a lot of promise, and we're going to talk about that. So let's dive right in. So I'm going to also attach the articles that I'm sourcing at the bottom. So if you have any interest in reading up on these articles, feel free to click on the links that we are going to provide. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our channel. So broader Medicare coverage is now available for Biogen and Eisai, that's a Japanese company, Leqembi, the brand name for lecanemab, following the FDA's, the Food and Drug Administration's, move to grant traditional approval to the drug that treats individuals with Alzheimer's disease. I used to be a social worker in long-term care back in the mid-90s, and I saw day to day how it affected people. Part of my job at the nursing facility where I worked at was to do cognitive assessments for our residents, and we had people that had lost so much. They had lost family members and lost their independence. I had one lady who was a nurse, and every day she'd come into my office and say, "When do I get to go home?" I talked to the doctor, and he says, "Margaret, we'll talk about that tomorrow." And the next thing I know, he's sending me a bill, and it's just heartbreaking. And so I would always tell her, "Well, Margaret, let's talk about that." And I'd set a time for her to come back to my office. And one time I made the mistake of writing it down on a piece of paper, and she came back at that time. So the next time, I didn't give her a time. I said, "Well, just come by I gave her a time, said, "Come by my office at 3 p.m. I did not write it down, and she never showed up. But it made her happy. She was happy with that answer. It's just heartbreaking. Most of us have known someone that's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. You may have a spouse even, or a parent, a grandparent, a loved one, someone you know. It's debilitating, it's cruel, and it really is a slow, painful death, not as much for the person diagnosed, but for the people affected by it, the family members. So the news that we have a possible, not a cure, but a treatment which can delay symptoms by the studies are showing about a 24% improvement for those who take this drug over 18 months during these clinical trials, which has led up to the FDA approval. This is a news release from CMS, which runs Medicare. This is a CNBC report here that says Medicare will cover the Alzheimer drug Leqembi. Now, when Aduhelm was released, and the rates for Medicare Part B went from $145 a month up to close to $170 a month back in 2021, Medicare kind of jumped the gun because the price for Aduhelm was about $56,000 per person per year. And this is not a drug covered by Part D. D as in drug coverage, which you pick up at a Walgreens or a local pharmacy. This is a drug that will be administered at a physician's office or a clinic. And there's going to be a lot of tests involved. MRIs, scans, radiology reports will have to determine that you qualify for this drug. So off the CNBC report, Medicare has agreed to pay for the Alzheimer treatment Leqembi, a major turning point for patients who are diagnosed with the early stages of the disease. The Leqembi is the only drug on the market right now that has demonstrated the ability to slow the progression of early stage Alzheimer's disease in a clinical trial. The monoclonal antibody administered twice monthly through intravenous means, so in other words, you must go to a clinic to get it administered like you would with chemo treatment for cancer, slowed cognitive decline by 27% over 18 months in the trial. So this is crucial for patients, for most patients, to have any hope of being able to afford Leqembi for Medicare to cover this. So Medicare has agreed to cover this, which they usually do when the FDA approves a drug, which they didn't do for Aduhelm. They only partially covered it for people in a clinical trial. Even though they raised people's premiums significantly to cover Aduhelm, they ended up not covering it unless you're in a small test group. The price tag of Aduhelm was $58,000. The sales were so slow that the manufacturer, Biogen, which is also a partner in this new drug, slashed the prices 50% down to $26,000, which is what Leqembi is going to cost, $26,500 a year before insurance coverage. So that's going to be extraordinarily expensive for people on Medicare, even with that Medicare coverage, because Medicare covers 80% of the cost of that drug. So that's going to be $5,000 out of pocket if you're on Medicare. So if you're on the fence about whether you should buy a Medicare supplement or not, you should strongly look at Medicare supplement insurance when A, you have a guaranteed right to buy with no health questions asked, or if you don't have a guaranteed right, if you've waited past 65 and 6 months, or if you've been off of employer insurance for a number of months now, you need to strongly look at Medicare supplement insurance, or maybe look at a Medicare Advantage plan. Now with Medicare Advantage plans, that's different from regular Medicare. With Medicare Advantage, you're on a private insurance plan which replaces Medicare. Most all Medicare Advantage plans pay 80%, just like regular Medicare does. So if you're on a Medicare Advantage plan, you will pay about $5,000, and that does not include the MRIs and the facility fees and the doctor fees. So most people on Medicare Advantage will pay well over $5,000 until they hit their maximum out of pocket. Now, if you're on a Medicare Advantage plan, your maximum out of pocket is $5,000, which is about average nationwide. That's all you'll have to pay. So now the doctors are going to have to go through a process. Medicare is going to pick up the majority of the bill. These doctors are going to have to report into a reporting system to help the government track the effectiveness of this drug. So you'll have to be diagnosed as early stage. So if you have mid-stage or late-stage Alzheimer's, you're not going to qualify for this treatment. The problem is we have such a shortage of specialists who treat elderly people with Alzheimer's, gerontologists, these people that diagnose these conditions often are on a waiting list to get treated. So if you're showing signs of memory issues, or if you notice your spouse is showing signs of memory issues, the day that you schedule the appointment with your primary care to get referred to a specialist, right now it could be months and months before you get diagnosed. And time is of the essence here, because this drug is only for people in early stage dementia care, Alzheimer care. So it might be 3 to 5 years or even longer before we have more providers that are able to help people get on this medication. So it's kind of like the demand is much more than the supply of providers that can actually treat people. So we are in a crisis here in our nation. We have a shortage of doctors, not just for Alzheimer's, but for other conditions as well. And then we have lawmakers questioning Medicare on the cost. Medicare will cover the disease. On June 10th, the letter HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra, Senator Bernie Sanders, chair of the Senate Health, Labor, Education, and Pensions Committee, called Leqembi's $26,000 annual price tag outrageously high. And the quote is, as we grapple with a huge number of Americans who will be seeking medical treatment for Alzheimer's, we must develop policies now that prevent pharmaceutical companies from bankrupting Medicare and our entire healthcare system. Well, we saw 2 years ago with Aduhelm, the increase of 15% of the Part B premium up to $170, only to be reduced this year because Medicare did not actually cover it in full because people had to be in a test group. So if one drug can affect Medicare premiums by that much, what if other companies come out with other treatments for Alzheimer's? And there are other companies working. I think Eli Lilly's working on a drug as well for Alzheimer's. So the news is encouraging. There's a report here with the CEO of Eisai, the Japanese company. He thinks there's going to be a cure. He thinks we're on the right path. Let's hope and pray that there is a cure for Alzheimer's, not just a slowdown of the disease, but an actual stoppage. Wouldn't that be awesome? So it doesn't hurt to have these treatments. What do we have to lose? This is a great breakthrough. This is an NPR report here, and I'm going to have a link to this as well. There is a couple in Missouri that tried it out, and let me find the report. Here we go. It seems that the scientific and clinician community understands the difference in this moment with Leqembi versus Aduhelm, which is the former drug, Pike says. Much of what scientists have learned about Leqembi is thanks to people like Ken and Susan Bell in St. Charles, Missouri. Susan, who is 70, began showing signs of Alzheimer's about 4 years ago. She enrolled in a clinical trial of Leqembi at Washington University in St. Louis and has been receiving the drug ever since. The drug hasn't stopped the disease, though. There has been certainly some degradation in her cognitive powers and so forth, Ken says, her husband. But Susan's decline has been relatively slow. The couple are still able to travel and play golf, which could signal that the drug is working. So people in the Alzheimer's early stages, what do you have to lose? I was asking my wife last night, we were talking about this. I said, would I pay $5,000 if you could have, or would you pay $5,000 to have me for one more year? And she said, absolutely. Then I was asking someone else earlier, well, what if it was $50,000? Would if I could pay that, would I? Of course, it was $100,000, I'd pay it. But most people can't pay that. The average median income for someone on Medicare is $30,000 nationwide. So those of you who are on Medicare, it's very important to make sure now that you're on a good plan for the future when this drug is readily available and there are more providers that are able to prescribe it. And you're able to get in and get the treatment for this drug and for future drugs. Don't wait. Don't wait till it's too late, because insurance companies are not going to accept your application if you've already been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or any other health condition that they don't want to cover. They have to cover you by law if you're brand new to Medicare, but they don't later on. That's the way the system works, whether we like it or not. So we're dealing with the cards we're dealt with. That being said, we are here for you at Senior Solutions Group. If you're on Medicare or you're approaching Medicare or you're approaching an important Medicare decision regarding supplemental plans, if you want to compare Medicare Advantage to regular Medicare, reach out to us at Senior Solutions Group. We are here for you. And if you're a current client, we're always here for you as well. You're never bothering us. Even if it's a simple question or two, if you need to review your plan, we're always available for you as well. You're very important to us. We love you, we cherish you, and you are why we do what we do. Thanks so much, and please share this with a friend, and have a great rest of your day.